Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Pep, you're watching The Sentinel, and I have a very special review today, and I've got a really good friend of mine from the channel, Mr. Sillage. It's Chris, and he's joining me today because he was very generous in sending me a sample of the perfume we're going to review today. I just wanted to say hi Chris, and say hello to everyone.
How's it going, Pep? And how's it going, everybody watching The Sentinel? My name is Chris. My channel's name is Mr. Sillage. And Pep, I really appreciate you having me on your channel, man. I mean, I've looked up to you since before I started my channel, so it's a pleasure and an honor to be on your channel and talk to your audience as well. So I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, mate. It is my pleasure because I really enjoy your videos. They're very entertaining, and particularly. I want to thank you for sending me this sample because before this particular one, I've only had one experience with the house that we're talking about, and I should mention that at this point, we're going to be reviewing 51 Homme by Roja Dove. Actually, can I just ask you, Chris, how do you pronounce R-O-J-A?
Roja, like a Jay-Z sort of Roja. That's how I pronounce it.
I will say Roja instead of Roger.
Okay.
So Roja Dove's 51 pour Homme, and this is the Parfum concentration. I'm reliably informed by Chris. So maybe Chris, if you want to show us the box and the bottle on camera, because I have a little decant and a lovely little atomizer, but I think if everyone wants to see the bottle, you can show it to them on camera.
Most definitely. So this is the box that the Roja 51 comes in, and as you can see, has the name of the company, Roja Parfums, and 51 Parfum on the box. The side has Roja's autograph on both sides. This isn't an actual autograph, that's on the box, that's how it comes. And on the back just has a little bit of information. When you open the box up, nestled in there is the cologne. And as you can see, or Parfum, I should say. And as you can see, we got the bottle right here. The bottle has a gold plate on the front, which has the same basic information that's on the front. And the cool thing about Roja Dove is obviously these displays, because I mean, look at these tops. These tops are incredible. Black Swarovski crystals on it. And this plate right here is actually plated in 24 karat gold as well. And on the side, you can see Roja Parfums. And that's pretty much it for the presentation. It's all basic. Rojas look sort of similar. They have different sizes varying, but this is just how they look in particular. The sprayers work really good as well. As you can tell, they're pressurized sprayers. But yeah, that's pretty much it for their presentation.
All right, so I will start off by giving my thoughts. Maybe I'm going to spray some of my skin here just to basically familiarize myself with the opening again, which I have notes here about how it progressed while I was testing it. And
yeah, and I have some sprayed on my hand.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna spray some on my arm right now to open up the opening as well and see how that smells. But also, I meant to tell you, we were talking about this, and I came across it today again, and I did find out that this fragrance is discontinued.
It is discontinued. Okay, because
it is.
I had a look on his website, and they have the 51 Parfum, the one marketed to women. That's definitely on there, but in the other categories, this one was nowhere to be found. So obviously going to become a collector's edition if it's discontinued. Okay, so with the opening on this, I've got to tell you, Chris, I really enjoy the opening of this fragrance, and the main things that I get from it are some kind of, I guess, citrus, and it's probably more bergamot than, say, lemon or anything else. But the most interesting thing that I get from the opening is there is something I get on my skin that is very animalic, and when I say animalic in this case, it's I don't want to put people off, but it's almost a fecal kind of note, okay? But it's not a bad thing. It seems to blend really well with the other ingredients, and it's a very striking opening. And by no means I don't think is it an offensive kind of smell. I just really was surprised when I sprayed it on my skin. I picked it up immediately, and that sort of tends to fade away after a couple of minutes. And what do you get in the opening when you spray it on?
And I definitely agree with you, especially the first time I got this fragrance. That first spray, actually, I'm personally myself, I wasn't, when I first got this fragrance, I wasn't really into those animalic notes to begin with, believe it or not. This fragrance was actually a doorway for me to get into those little. But the great thing about it is, like you were saying, there's that animalic note that's in there, but I think it's lightened up a lot with that bergamot that you're talking about. That citrus allows this animalic note to be sort of subdued, like sort of like an animal in a cage, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Like you can still admire it, but from afar to where it's not offensive. And yeah, definitely that the opening, like I said, first caught me off guard, but I come to adore this fragrance, this opening in particular. Really, like I said, opened the door for animalic notes for me.
I agree, because to me the rest of the fragrance, the rest of the development in the fragrance is more toned down than the opening. So I don't want anyone to think that this is a challenging fragrance in any way. And I will point out that when you smell the opening of this, and it's safe to assume from what I've read about other Roja fragrances, is the thing that struck me is that this smelled like quality. Okay, so once you smell enough fragrances, you can go into any discount store and buy a cheap fragrance, and you can start to recognize things that smell cheaper, and maybe the ingredients that are used are not so great and don't smell as nice. Now, I have no doubt that this is not an argument about synthetics versus natural, because I have no doubt that Roja would use aroma chemicals in his fragrances, but what he does use and the way he blends this fragrance, everything just smells really natural and of really high quality. So after a little while in this fragrance, after that opening, the florals start to come into the heart of this fragrance, and some spices. Mainly I get geranium, because geranium does have a bit of spiciness for a floral note to my nose, and I really just love the way this does develop and change as time goes on. It was at this point where this fragrance actually started to remind me of another fragrance that I really love, and I don't know if you've tried this one, Chris. This is I started to think about how much this reminded me of Heritage Eau de Toilette from Guerlain. It's one of the fragrances I love from Guerlain, and it was interesting because when I looked up the note pyramid for the Heritage, this fragrance does share a lot of the same notes, and that doesn't necessarily mean in itself that it should smell the same, but I found it interesting that it reminded me of that fragrance, and it also shared a lot of the same notes particularly in the heart of the note pyramid.
Yeah, and I remember we were talking, and me and you were shooting back and forth, and you were trying to figure out what it got compared to, and I think I noticed on Fragrantica some people compared it to Noir de Noir, which is a fragrance that I haven't smelled personally, but you said that it wasn't the one that you were thinking of, and then finally it did hit you that it was this Guerlain fragrance. Yeah,
well, it certainly to me doesn't remind me of Noir de Noir by Tom Ford, because they're almost, maybe there are small aspects in the development where it might remind people of that, but these to me are completely different fragrances. I love Noir de Noir, but it's a totally different beast compared to 51. So how does this develop on your skin after the opening?
You know what I get a little bit of the geranium, but the flower that speaks out to me the most in this is the rose. The rose starts to come out to me a little bit more on, and it's shortly after that initial blast. The rose on me tends to be a little more dominant with this fragrance, and it's weird with his blends, because with his blends, people get different effects on their skin, and I definitely get that same 3D notes in layers sort of thing like you do, but mine starts, my mid is more of a rose dominant performance, and I think a little bit of the geranium in there, but I get mostly rose on me, and I do get the spiciness as well. So maybe that I don't have that much experience with the geranium, so maybe that could be that spice, but the rose is just, and it's a beautiful rose. It's not jammy. It's not like the overly sweet synthetic kind of rose. It's a like almost like the velvety touch of a rose is how I would describe that.
Yeah, well, and just that fact goes to show how important it is for people to test fragrances wherever they can on their own skin, because this just proves that everyone gets something different from the same fragrance, and it's very, very rare that, from my experience, that the one fragrance will smell exactly the same on different people's skin. So, but I mean, like I said earlier, this is a complex fragrance to me, because there are, and the way that you described it as a three-dimensional fragrance is a great description, because different things come out at different times, and when I was talking about earlier how it starts to smell like something like heritage, what I forgot to add there is that yes, there are aspects of it, but then I started to get probably about half an hour into the wear, this really nice leather note underpinning everything, underpinning that floral and spiciness from the heart.
I know, I was, and that's funny because I was waiting for you to get to that leather. I love that leather note in there. Is just, it's so good. I love the leather in this scent.
I really like it. Yeah, I really like it because to me it's a very smooth leather, and it's not for me it's not an in-your-face leather in the style of Tuscan leather and things like that. This really is the best way to describe it is all those flowers and spices wrapped in a leather pouch or something like that, and that's kind of how it comes out to my nose.
I never thought of it that way, and that's actually a really good example. For this kind of leather, it's not, like you said, it's not overly overt that it's in this. It's not a punch in the face kind of leather, and it's definitely subdued. And like you said, I never thought of that analogy, and that's actually a really good one. Is that these flowers wrapped in a leather pouch? Definitely I can see that, and it definitely comes out, like you said, with the 3D effect. I get different because of the blend, and I'm not sure, as I get different dominance throughout this fragrance. It can go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's sort of weird. It can go to the deep base, but then even in the deep dry down, I get some of the notes from even the top sometimes. Sometimes I get a little bit of that citrus that sort of like reacts with those base notes. It's really weird. It's not a experience that I experienced through a lot of other fragrances at all.
I definitely agree, because as this wore on my skin, so say let's talk about after a couple of hours on my skin, I mainly the dominant things that started to come out were the woods, were the resins, and still all very natural smelling, and then this gorgeous soft amber note through that as well. But as you say, I was still getting quite a bit of the florals well into the dry down. Maybe not so much the citrus, but you know, that could be a skin thing. But certainly things that were there early on in the wear were still apparent late into the dry down with some new things coming through. And I have to say that to me is really excellent. It tells me that it's a really excellent composition. It's a really well put together fragrance, and when that kind of thing happens with a fragrance, it's even to the not too experienced nose, it's one thing that is a telltale sign that this is being put together by a very good perfumer.
It's amazing because, like you said, those florals come out. Those in the dried out, I get a lot of that. It's the oud, but it's not. It's funny because, like we were talking about in the opening, there's that animalic scent, but then towards the dry down, it's very, very subdued, and I start to get that oud, and it's not that very fecal kind of oud. And I personally don't have that much experience with a lot of oud scents. But this is a very, very pleasant oud and a very subdued, and all the notes that are with it just make this a very pleasurable experience for someone who practically doesn't have that kind of experience with ouds.
Well, what I was going to say about that was that there is oud in here, but it's certainly not a fragrance where you would smell and go, oh, this is an oudy fragrance. It just the way it's used here is just complements everything, lends a bit of darkness, a little bit of weight to the base of it as well, because the main woods that I get in the base are probably more of the birch that I get with that there's a tiny bit of smokiness, and that could be coming from the oud as well. But the bottom line is with this fragrance is I really enjoy wearing this, and I think it's an excellent fragrance, and it develops well. It ticks all of those boxes. You know, if I had to say one thing about it, and this isn't a prerequisite for every new fragrance that I smell, but because it did at times remind me of other fragrances, or you know, one particular one in Maine is, you know, maybe it's probably not the most original composition, but sometimes it doesn't matter, because if you smell something that's this well put together, you know, you would rather be smelling something like this rather than something that's completely original and avant-garde but smells like shit, basically.
I totally agree. And you know, it's funny because I'm starting to get into that. I'm trying to get into that avant-garde territory, and I'm diving into indie houses and all that stuff too. And you know, it is cool to get into those fragrances that are different and, you know, that are a little over the top. But I mean, ultimately we just want to smell really good, don't we? And that's how this fragrance makes me feel. It's not only the scent itself, but it's the feeling that comes with wearing this fragrance.
Yeah.
I feel really good. I feel really confident. I feel really sort of like I could take on the world kind of feeling. You know what I mean? It's just such a great fragrance to wear.
Yeah, absolutely. It does make you feel good wearing this fragrance. And sometimes you wear fragrances that, although you like, might make you feel a bit self-conscious. This one certainly, I guess you described it well. It does. There's a sense of power about wearing this fragrance, and I just feel good wearing it, like you. So. Moving on to a thing that a lot of people want to know about, performance-wise on my skin. I got about 8 hours on my skin, and to me this wasn't a huge projecting fragrance. Maybe in the first hour or so you would be able to smell it on me. I'm generally about a 4 spray person, regardless of what type of fragrance I'm wearing. And I could smell this quite clearly on me for the first hour, and then it was more of a skin scent, but it was there for at least 8 hours on me. I do need to preface that with the fact that I did test this in mainly warmer weather, so I think this will actually be better once it cools down here in Australia.
Yeah, and right here, it's around it's breaking winter. It's still sort of, but I tested it out in the wintertime, and you're definitely good with 8 hours. I definitely get around 8 hours of performance, maybe a little bit more sometimes. But the thing is, it does die down within that first hour. But for me, that projection, like you said, it dies down. But this thing still has sillage. That sillage in the air, even though it wasn't projecting off my skin, people that I would pass by still noticed this well after that hour of power projection. It'd be 4 hours into the scent, and if I walked past somebody and I was close enough to them, they definitely smelled this fragrance, and I definitely have gotten a decent amount of compliments on it from those kind of interactions.
I would actually wear this most of the year round. Probably, maybe, if it was really, really stinking hot, perhaps there might be aspects of this fragrance that might come out that might not be so pleasant. I think it would definitely shine at its full potential in cool weather, but there's no reason anyone should not wear fragrances that they love regardless of the environment. So I guess just to round out this review or this discussion, I think obviously it's apparent that we both really like this fragrance. You obviously have a bottle. I really like my sample. The only thing personally that really is dependent on the individual and what your philosophy is in regards to purchasing fragrances is I personally would not pay full retail for any juice at the prices that Roja Dove sells the bottles for. So it's not just this house, but I would be absolutely more than happy to purchase decants of this, because I don't really care about the packaging that it comes in. So if I can get this at what I think the juice is worth, that's absolutely fine with me. So that would be my only issue. I can't sit here and tell people you should buy a bottle of this. I think it's great juice, but obviously always sample first, and then if it was me, I'd be looking for decants. But that's my personal position.
And even me owning a bottle, I would not tell you to go out and buy this is expensive. This does put a dent in your bank account. You will be eating ramen noodles for the next couple of days. But I had the benefit of being a 35-year-old single male who has a decent enough income to with being single and not having any kids, I pamper myself, I guess. So this purchase is that. I do not ever suggest buying it yourself. I do not ever suggest blind buying it at all.
Yeah.
This is one you must try. Especially if you're going to buy full presentation, do not blind buy.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And always to each their own. And I would never suggest that how anyone collects or enjoys their fragrances is any better or worse than anyone else. It's always an individual thing. So like a fragrance is different on everybody's skin. The way you want to have fragrances, collect, display, whatever, is an individual thing. And if you've got the means to do it, look, if I was 35 and single, I would be absolutely probably doing the same thing.
But I admire what you have too, Pep. So, the grass is always greener, right?
I want to thank you so much for joining me today, buddy, and thanks so much. I'm going to treasure the rest of this juice, what I have. I think I'll get several wears from it, definitely, and then hopefully by then I can find some more. But it has made me definitely more interested in trying other Roja creations. I've only got a decant of Enigma or Creation E, Parfum. I don't know if you've tried that, and I have tried the newer one. I had a tiny sample of United Arab Emirates, which was a gorgeous rose oud fragrance. That was really lovely. But thank you again, Chris. I'll leave a link to Chris's channel in my description. Go and check his channel out. It's always a lot of fun, and he even has a great video about panty droppers at the moment.
Pep, thank you so much for having me on your channel, man. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I really appreciate you putting my link on the bottom of your channel. And I'll sign off with my sign off before you sign off, if that's okay. As always, and most importantly, go frag yourself, guys.
And here's my sign off. I'll see you later.